Once upon a time, there were two sisters, Mangita and Larina, who lived in a small cottage. Mangita was a hard worker. She used to work in her father's grocery store in her spare time. Larina, on the other hand, loved to travel and have fun. When she was bored, she looked at herself by the river and combed her hair for a long time.
Today, I am more beautiful than my sister again.
One day, Mangita and Larina's father went on a long journey from which there was no return. Although Mangita was very sad about her father's departure, Larina was so happy.
Hee! Now every day I can sit by the river until morning.
After her father left, Mangita started working harder. She was sweeping the floor in the mornings, making a delicious soup in the afternoon, and hanging the laundry. Larina's only pastime was to cause trouble for her sister. She was dirtying the carpets in the house, pouring ice-cold water into the cooked soup. Why is the soup still cold? And why are these carpets dirty? I just cleaned them.
The animals you feed have made them dirty. Huh!
One day, Larina went out for a walk in the forest. She was just plucking the unripe fruit and threw them into the river. Meanwhile, an old woman who was walking slowly approached her.
Hello, beautiful girl. I'm very hungry. Can you give me some fruit too?
Larina handed the old woman the tasteless wild strawberries she had just picked.
Ma'am, you can eat as much as you want. These are the most delicious strawberries in the world.
The old woman had a stomachache as soon as she ate the strawberries.
Are these strawberries delicious? Ooh! Thank you anyway.
As Larina was returning home, the old woman fell asleep. While Mangita was out picking vegetables in the forest for the meal, she saw the old woman who fell ill. She immediately brought her home and put her on the bed.
What is this woman doing in our house? She smells so bad.
Don't say that, Larina. The woman is very sick. We must feed her with healthy food to heal her. Mangita prepared hot soups and herbal teas for the old woman. On the other hand, Larina secretly threw away the soups and put soil in the herbal teas. Larina, did you put soil in this herbal tea? Tell me now!
No, it wasn't me. That old woman put it herself.
Within a few days, the old woman recovered.
You are a kind-hearted girl, Mangita. If you ever get sick, eat these blueberries every day. You'll recover immediately.
Mangita, who was very tired of doing housework alone for a long time, eventually fell very ill and was lying in bed. Larina, can you bring the blueberries the old lady gave me? But Larina ate all the blueberries herself.
There is nothing here. The birds you feed must have eaten them.
Mangita became even more sluggish and fell asleep in a sweat. Larina, on the other hand, left the house and went to the river to comb her hair. At that time, the old woman appeared before her again.
Hey, little girl, where is your sister? She packed fruit in sacks and went to work. Ugh, what's it to you?
The old woman realized that Larina was lying. She immediately went to their house to see Mangita. When the old woman saw this young girl who was helping her, sweating and sick, she was very upset and wept for a long time. Larina, who was watching them from the window, laughed out loud. Just then, the old woman turned into a beautiful fairy. Larina was very surprised to see the fairy. She happily entered the house.
You are a fairy. I opened my home to you. You owe me. Give me the most beautiful hair in the world. Quick, use magic now and make my wish come true.
In fact, when the fairy saw Larina for the first time, she turned into an old woman to see if she was a good person. I gave the opportunity to do one favor, but you always did bad. At that moment, the fairy waved her magic wand from side to side. Larina's hair has turned into ivy.
Ah, my hair! What happened to my hair? They're so ugly now! Help!
Larina ran to the riverside in fear and looked at her hair. As flies were flying around her head, her ivy hair was stuck in the ground all of a sudden.
I've become so ugly. I don't want to look at myself anymore.
At that time, the fairy fed Mangita a blueberry, and Mangita finally recovered and opened her eyes. Thank you, fairy. I feel so much better now. The fairy waved her wand twice and turned the little cottage they lived in into a stunning palace. Mangita was very surprised and impressed when she saw the palace. Goodness is always rewarded, young girl, and this palace is your reward. Thank you, fairy. What about my sister? What happened to her? Your sister will forever stare at her ugly reflection by the riverside. But I love my sister so much. What's the point of living alone in this huge palace without her? Give us a happy life in our cottage again, fairy. That's all I wish from you. The fairy was very happy when she heard Mangita's words. First, she transformed the magnificent palace back into a cottage again. Later, she went to Larina and restored her ivy hair to its former beautiful state with her magic wand. Larina hugged Mangita happily. You saved me. I'm very sorry. I will be a good person now. I promise. Larina understood at that moment that the happiness of helping people is worth everything. Because happiness becomes more beautiful when shared.
In a land far, far away, there was a monster living in the middle of the desert. Moreover, he was only fed with fresh soil, newly greened plants and seeds. A little far from the desert, there was a kingdom he had not yet discovered and had not gone and eaten its soil. The king and the queen of this kingdom did not have children, and they were very sad because of this. When the queen couldn't sleep one night, she sneaked out of the palace. She wandered around the desert. Although the desert monster noticed her, he did not go near her and did not harm her, because all he wanted was to eat all the plants and fresh soil in the world. At that moment, a star fell in the sky and left a green trail behind it. Seeing the falling star, the queen immediately made a wish. Oh, I wish I had a daughter so I could hug her and raise her with love. At that moment, a star fairy appeared in front of the queen. Oh, you are a fairy! I cannot believe my eyes! Yes, dear queen, I heard your wish and came to your presence. If you want to have a child, wander through this desert for 7 days and nights. The magic of the stars will surprise you. The queen did indeed wander through the desert for 7 days and nights, listening to the words of the star fairy. The king, on the other hand, thought that the queen, who had not returned to the palace for days, was lost, and he was devastated. At the end of her 7th day in the desert, just as she was in despair, the queen heard a cry. The queen moved toward the direction the voice came from. She saw a tiny baby crying on the sand. She immediately took her in her arms and returned to the palace. The king was very happy when he saw the queen safe and sound days later. And the cute baby she was carrying in her arms increased his happiness even more. They named that little baby the Earth Princess. Years passed. The Earth Princess grew up and became a very beautiful girl. Her favorite thing since she was a baby was playing with sand. If she drew a butterfly in the sand, the butterflies turned into reality and flew around her. Or if she drew a flower, it turned into a real flower and smelled amazing. The only person who realized that the Earth Princess had a magical power was her father, the king. But he didn't tell anyone about her power so that no harm would come to her. One day, when the people were planting new crops, the nose of the desert monster caught a sharp smell. He soon realized it was the smell of fresh soil. When he thought of the delicious saplings and seeds he would eat, he could not resist and quickly started to move towards the direction of the smell. Meanwhile, the people in the kingdom noticed that the ground was starting to shake.
Oh! What's going on? Is this an earthquake?
This is something else!
Noticing the ground shaking, the king and the queen also rushed out of the palace balcony and saw the desert monster far away under the ground moving towards the kingdom.
Oh no! I thought he was a myth!
This is very bad! The myth is becoming true! The king immediately ordered his soldiers to stop the desert monster. The soldiers took cover at the gates of the kingdom. But the desert monster was so big and scary that many of the soldiers thought they could not defeat him. When the desert monster approached to the kingdom, he caught the soldiers one by one and threw them in the desert.
No! Help! Help! No! My soldiers! Our land!
Seeing this, the people stopped cultivating the land and began to flee to save their lives. The monster continued to eat every sapling, every fresh greenery he saw. While the people did not know what to do out of sadness and fear, the king came out of his palace with all his might. The Earth Princess followed him too.
My princess, my beautiful daughter, stay in the palace with your mother. I don't want him to hurt you.
No, Daddy. You know I can beat him. I can save our kingdom, our land. The king did not want his only daughter, the Earth Princess, to come face to face with the desert monster. So he left her behind, took up his sword, and rushed towards the monster that was eating the fertile land. He tried to stop him, but failed. Just as the desert monster was about to grab the king and throw him into the desert, the Earth Princess could not stand it any longer and drew a shield on the sand. This shield has been magically made real. The Earth Princess protected herself with that shield and ran towards the desert monster. Even though the desert monster threw sand at the princess, he couldn't stop her. The Earth Princess immediately bent down and drew a large bucket in the sand. The bucket was made real. With her magical power, the princess lifted this bucket and threw it at the desert monster. The bucket got on the desert monster's head and got stuck there. Thus, the monster could not see ahead and he could no longer eat the fertile land. At that time, the Earth Princess gathered all her attention and created a desert tornado to drive the monster away from the kingdom. This tornado was so big and strong that it engulfed the monster in an instant and carried him far from the kingdom. The people who watched what was happening were both in great astonishment and happiness. The Earth Princess was exhausted from the magic she used. Father King immediately ran to her and hugged her.
You saved our lives, our land, our kingdom! Princess!
From that day on, the Earth Princess protected all the lands of the kingdom with her courage forever. Because without soil, there would be no life, and the Earth Princess knew it best.